Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks Politics. Today, my guest is Richard Cook. He's the leader of Gloucester City Council and leader of the Tory party. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Mark.
Now, last night was at the extraordinary council meeting. It got very raucous, actually, at times. There were lots of finger pointing, lots of debate. Democracy, wheels were turning. What was your overall view? You must be quite pleased on the overall outcome.
Well, on the overall outcome, I think it was a successful meeting, but it was fractious at times. People were quite highly motivated by the issues that had happened and tended to try and focus too much on what had gone wrong rather than try and sort out what needed to be done to make sure leisure services were restored for the city. And that's what we were trying to focus on. But it became a bit of a political debate because the opposition groups were saying we got it all wrong. That's why the failure had occurred. I don't agree with that at all. We were constantly discussing with Aspire their means of their finances, their means of providing the services that they did, the opportunities to do more, to bring in more income. But when it came to them saying to us, we want more money, yet more money from you, and we'd already agreed a management fee of 360,000, and they wanted yet another 260,000, we asked a respective firm of accountants to have a look, and they were as nonplussed as we were about their accounts. They couldn't understand them either. So I largely think that the issues that went wrong were down to some kind of mismanagement within Aspire. We heard last night about them awarding 10% pay rises to their senior, their best paid staff. I know they had to do that for their lowest paid staff, but frankly, a 10% pay rise for a company that's on the verge of bankruptcy and really struggling in terms of finances is a step too far, in my opinion. So we asked Hazelwood.
Richard, can I just stop you there? I've got to ask you, but how the hell did that get through the board? And who is responsible for it? You're talking, yes, I can understand it, a cost of living crisis. It was 9.3% pay rise for the lower incomes that everybody was given right across the country. It was nationally. But we're talking about 35 managers. It was said last night between 35 and maybe £60,000 salaries given 9.3% pay rise. I worked that out at the top end as £7,000 pay rise a year. And then you're talking on the senior management level, it could be on between 80 and £90,000. You're talking about a pay rise of 10 grand. How did that get through the board?
Well, that's something that you'd have to ask the board because, that certainly wouldn't have happened in a local government setting. We would have been on that as the administration and made sure something like that did not go ahead because it's completely unjustified in the circumstances. They're struggling financially. How can they afford to justify those sorts of pay rises? In my opinion, completely wrong. But I'm not a board member. I didn't involve myself in those board meetings. I can't do. I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed.
There is, Paul Tolman is a member of the cabinet there. He is actually on that board as well.
That's true, but he's only one of several members of the board. I don't know. I don't have any details about the minutes from the board as to who voted for what. But I know that he wasn't present at the final meeting when they decided that they were going to shut down the entire operation. But other meetings, he may well have been for or against. I can't believe actually that he would have been for such a pay rise, but I haven't got access to that information.
Now, basically, you gave you were offering £500,000, and that whole £500,000 was going to go on these new salaries. It wasn't going to run, and they were in a deficit of £500,000.
Well, we had the report from the accountancy company that I mentioned earlier, and it gave us 4 recommendations about monitoring Aspire more closely. And when we tried to apply those recommendations, there was a lot of resistance from Aspire, accusing us of micromanagement. Well, I'm sorry, if we're giving them, it was actually 620 if you add the management fee and the extra money. When we're giving them that amount of money to provide those leisure services, I think we have a duty to look at that as being taxpayers' money, and we have to make sure it's properly spent. And our findings up to that point were that they weren't spending their money properly.
How do you feel about the accusation that, you know, the Tory party or the council was asleep at the wheel at this?
Well, I made two comments about that last night. One was that we were not asleep at the wheel. We were in constant meetings with Aspire, trying to ensure that they could continue to provide those leisure services. But I also made the point that when it came to scrutiny, there is a duty on the part of the opposition parties who run the scrutiny committees to scrutinise organisations that are in partnership with the council. And the last scrutiny meeting to look at Aspire was in January 2019. Now, since then, for more than 4 years, nearly 5 years has gone by, and a lot of that has been under the Lib Dems, running the scrutiny committee. Councillor Hilton himself has been on that scrutiny committee since forever. And yet he didn't do anything. He didn't suggest, knowing that we had all the problems that occurred through COVID, knowing that it shut down the swimming pool operations and all the sports operations, knowing that they would, still had all the costs involved, but no income. And then we moved into the cost of living crisis, where utility costs went up so much. He knew all of that, yet he couldn't be bothered to say, let's scrutinise it and make sure things are okay and that we can help. So if he wants to accuse us of being failures when we were having, having so much contact with Aspire and providing them with so much funding to ensure that they could continue to deliver the services, why doesn't he look at himself? Well, of course, he's not going to look at himself because he thinks he's whiter than white.
What about the other accusation coming from the opposition that, this is a number of different projects that have gone around. Marketing Gloucester was mentioned, DRIC was mentioned, the telephone, obviously the cyber attack, and then on top of this we've got this as well. What's your response to that kind of accusation?
Being a council is a difficult job. We have an awful lot of things to deal with all the time. Yes, things go wrong. I think Hannah Norman said last night, we get curveballs thrown at us all the time. But the job of being councillors and running a council is to deal with those issues. And we do, those issues do occur. I don't deny it. Sometimes you could blame us and maybe feel that that's right. In many of those cases, I don't think it's fair to. We've got on and dealt with them.
Richard, the good part of this, at the end of the day, you all agreed to reopen. Can you just explain about that? What is the next stage? What's going to happen next for Aspire?
Well, we're going to steadily reopen all the facilities. Many of them have already reopened with the help of the university and other partners. And we will, by the end of this month, select an interim service provider who will work with us for the next 12 to 18 months while we go into long-term procurement to find a long-term provider of our leisure services. So that's the way it's going. We put the money that we'd offered Aspire, and which they carefully rejected, into the pot to enable us to provide all those services in the meantime and to help that delivery. And I'm sure that before the end of this year, we'll have full service back as normal.
If you had one thing to say to the chief executive of Aspire, who wasn't there last night, which I was quite surprised of it, actually, that she wasn't there to answer any questions, what would you say to
her? Actually, I don't want to deal with negatives, so I wouldn't be saying anything to her about it. What's happened has happened, and I want to be positive and look forward.
Richard, thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks Politics.
Okay, thank you.